So here we are at week 7. So I'm excited about this week because this is the week where we really dig into understanding how to heal a trigger. Today is lesson 2, and lesson 2 is what is an out of proportion response. So at the last lesson of this week, we will put all of these pieces together, but I really want to separate them into parts so that you can understand each of the parts before we put them together and do the work. And then next week, I'm going to show you how to actually work through them. So here we go. What is an out of proportion response? It's a common question. It's hard to know. One of the problems that we have when we're a survivor of childhood trauma is that we're so used to our own out of proportion responses, whether it's the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, that we may not recognize them. So I will tell you the basic definition is any response reaction that's bigger than the situation. So if you are a person who freezes and shuts down, then your freezing and shut down comes over things that are really small and not threatening. Or if you're a fighter, you'll have a bigger emotional response and maybe be louder than the situation calls for. So we're going to go through all of them: fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, to help you understand what your out of proportion response may look like based on your style of responding to your triggers. The first one, before we go there, know also that it can be internal or external. So you see in the top of this picture, the woman is yelling at somebody else. That's an example of an external behavior. But the reality is that we can be fully triggered and look like everything is normal to the outside world. So just because we're not overreacting externally or nobody can see our overreaction doesn't mean it isn't happening. One of the symptoms of dissociation is going completely in your head and going full on, just like getting lost in your thoughts. So you could be with a friend, you could be interacting with people and still have stuff going on in your head that indicates that you're having an out of proportion response to what's going on. So in the fight response, any of these things can be that I've listed here are things that could be out of proportion responses. So that's why there's a volcano behind her. Like the fight is bigger than anything that is coming up in your environment that would indicate that you need to defend yourself. Remember, the fight response is approaching a threat to neutralize that threat so that you can keep yourself safe. The question is the thing that you're approaching with the fight response truly a threat to your existence, a threat to your well-being, a threat to your safety? Those are the questions to ask. So a fight response could be crying, like when the situation doesn't call for crying. Could be the desire to punch or rip, or find yourself making fists. Clenching your jaw. So remember, I've talked in earlier lessons about the fight, ready for fight or flight response that can happen in our jaw, our neck, or shoulders. So that ready for fight or flight response, if you're not watching for it and practicing daily relaxing this part of your body, then you're having more of an uphill fight than you need to when it comes to out of proportion responses, because you're already that close to the edge. And if you're not relaxing it, then this flexing, tightening your jaw, grinding your teeth, snarling, looking on your face like you're about to tear someone up, that's your fight response. Fighting in your eyes, which means the look on your face. So you look at her face. She looks really angry. What if nothing happened? Like, I've had a response like that just to a series of questions that my partner asked me. Now, I knew not to say anything because the thoughts that were going through my head were not responses that were appropriate for the situation. It was bigger. Like, I was more angry, I could tell, than the situation called for. There was no threat to me, and that's the thing to think about. So glaring, somebody telling you that you look really angry, or having like that tension in your voice that you can tell like you're ready to fight. So the desire to stomp, kick, smash with your legs or feet, feeling angry or rage coming up in your body that you know is bigger than the situation. Homicidal or suicidal feelings are also a sign of the fight response. Sometimes they can come out of nowhere. You don't know what's going on. It could be just a sign that you're triggered. So remember, these are all out of proportion signs that you're triggered. A knotted stomach or nausea or burning in your stomach, or feeling like bombs going off or volcanoes erupting in your body, or feeling like you want to set off a bomb. All of that is indication that you're having an out of proportion response, which means that something has triggered you. So when you feel anything on this list, it's time to stop and say, okay, what just happened? What's going on for me? So the fight response looks the most like anger. And one of the things that we know is that if you've had chronic long-term anger in your life, or if your response to your trauma has been anger, then the more times we've experienced anger, then the more difficulty we have separating ourselves from the moment to calm down, to say, okay, what's real right now? So if you find yourself in the fight response, one of the things to know is that we are certain now that it doesn't matter what your age is, the brain can change. It takes practice. But specifically, if you find yourself having any of these responses to triggers, and your reactions are bigger than what the situation calls for, and if you've been in anger and had lots of anger in your life, then it's not likely that you're able to tell without taking time away and calming yourself down whether or not that reaction is bigger than what was needed in the situation. But what we know is that because of neuroplasticity, practicing noticing when you're triggered and taking time out is the biggest factor in your ability to learn how to take time out when you have these kinds of fight reactions in response to a triggering event. The next out of proportion responses are flight. So you might feel restlessness in your legs and in your feet. The body has a way of showing what we feel. So do you have times when you can't sit still? Or is your breathing shallow? Are you feeling anxious? Are you looking around? I've been told before that I look like a deer in the headlights. So I used to get triggered in the grocery store. And right before I healed that trigger, I was in the grocery store and I got injured in the grocery store. I opened the dairy cabinet door and my foot was in the way. So I pulled that door right over my toes. It was like right over my toes. And it really hurt. And I was already triggered. So because I was in a grocery store. Grocery stores are triggering for me because of some childhood experience. So now I'm in the grocery store, I'm triggered, so I'm already in fear. And then I got hurt on top of it, and I completely shut down. My partner was with me. He saw it. He saw the look on my face, and the look on my face that he saw was those big darting eyes. I just went blank. My eyes got big, right? And for me, I shut down. So there was a flight response at the same time of me shutting off. And he said to me, I want you to go get your vitamins, go to the vitamin section, get your vitamins, and then meet me at the checkout line. I'm like, okay. Because for me, when I got triggered in that kind of way, being told what to do and given a task that I could focus on till I could get myself out of there was what I needed. So big darting eyes, leg and foot movement that shows that your body wants out, fidgetiness, restlessness, feeling trapped or tense. Here's another one. having a sense of running in your life. So you're going from one activity to the next, to the next, to next, to the next without taking a break. Here's the thing. When we're perpetually in a flight state, when our trauma brain says you're never safe, then we metaphorically create this running sense in our life, this flight. So we're always running. Life never slows down. We don't really look at, okay, what am I doing? Am I creating this? And it may be a good thing to do. So if you're feeling like you have a sense of running in your life, you're going from one activity to the next, or exercising excessively. So one of the things that people can do when they're really triggered is say, oh, well, I'll just exercise it off. But if you exercise it, but you don't take care of the trigger, then you're just supporting, reinforcing the flight response. Okay, so that's why PTSD is so insidious. The other is avoidance. So just being unwilling to look at or talk about, not willing to have the conversation with the employer, with your friend, with your partner, that's also a flight response. Getting away and hiding from the thing that's scaring you. The freeze response is another one, and that is feeling stuck in some part of the body. So it's really very interesting. I did some somatic body work. It's called craniosacral therapy. And I've talked before about having a paralyzed diaphragm, and I've told you more than once that my preferred mode when I respond to my own trauma is freeze. Well, my diaphragm was frozen, and with some craniosacral therapy, I was able to get that part of my body moving. But it's very interesting. Before that body part started moving, I actually released lots of tears and crying and talking about feeling stuck during that therapy session. So the body really does show us metaphorically when we're triggered. So one of the out of proportion response that we can have is feeling stuck. What about feeling stuck here, right? That's a freeze response as well. Feeling cold, frozen, numb, having pale skin could be a trigger response. Feeling a sense of stiffness, right? In the ready for fight or flight response, or heaviness, holding our breath. That's why breathing is so important, because a freeze response entails holding our breath or restricted breathing. Sense of dread or a pounding heart, a change in heart rate. Orientation to the threat means that we're looking at the threat but not moving. Like, it's almost like I never have really liked watching horror movies, but in those scenes where you watch something coming in your direction and then everything in your body gets completely silent, and it's like you could stop your heart, shut down, slow down everything to avoid the threat, like playing dead when a bear is coming around. That's what the freeze response is. So maybe somebody asks you a question, a simple question. What are you going to do today? And your response to that simple question is you feel a stiffness in your chest. You stop breathing. It was just a question. Maybe you're not in danger, but your trauma brain is telling you that the situation is dangerous. That's an out of proportion response. So if you can tell that even with these fight, flight, or freeze, as we're looking at these, they can be very subtle. And especially when we're talking about relationship, out of proportion responses can be very subtle. The last one is fawn. So fawn was identified by Pete Walker in his book, Complex PTSD. I have it here. Complex PTSD from Surviving to Thriving. And he talks about that fawn state. And the fawn state really is disconnecting from yourself, from your own body, to please other people. So disconnecting from your body, meaning disconnecting from your sensations, from your feelings, going numb, having a sense that you're not real, and doing that in a effort to please other people, to hide your feelings, walking on eggshells, shape-shifting meaning, becoming whatever you think it is that you need to be to make the other person stop being a threat to you, denying your own needs, sacrificing your personal needs to benefit the relationship. This is something else that is very, very subtle. But when you start paying attention to it and going, okay, why am I not saying what I need? Is there really a threat here? Is my partner looking for something that I need, looking for me to ask for the things that I need, but I'm just too scared to do it? So that's what the fawn response is. So even if you have to look over this video several times to identify what your out of proportion responses are, I recommend that you go back through the list and you write down times where you maybe have noticed these out of proportion responses in yourself so that you can watch for them. Because when they show up, the thing that you've got to do first is be aware of it. If we're not aware of it, we can't heal it. So first become aware of it, and then we're going to use the rest of the tools and the 6 steps to help us really understand what's happening at a deeper level so that you can heal that specific response to that specific trigger. So Pete Walker talks about the 4 distortions that come up when we're talking about how to keep ourselves safe in relationship. So in the fight response, that first one, we try to control the situation and other people in order to connect with them. And we'll use rage to make ourselves feel safe. In the flight response, we try to be perfect to please other people if we're perfect enough to be able to connect with them, and to be perfect so that we can stay safe in relationship. For the freezers, it's not about connection. It's about there's no way I'm going to connect because connection is going to hurt me, so I need to hide. Okay? And fawn is to merge. So the only way that we can connect if I'm in fawn state is to identify what it is that you need and want and do all of the things that would allow me to become imperceptible to you in terms of differences of needs between you and me. And grovel to be safe. Groveling as in whatever you want. I'm going to do what you want. I'm going to be what you want. I'm not going to be any different than you so that I can be safe. So your homework is to identify what your specific fight, flight, freeze, or fawn behaviors are. We're not going to attack them all at once, but you need to know what they are so that you can identify what you want to work on when you start working on healing triggers. Next lesson, what is body history and how are we going to use it to help us heal? So get your homework done from this lesson and I'll see you in the next one.